Primary bike parts. All right, let's talk about the anatomy of a bicycle, if you will. There's lots of different components that go into a bike, from the screws to the cabling to the spokes. Um, I'll try to stay focused on the highest level as much as possible. So I think, when a lot of people may know, top level bike parts, you've got the frame, the seat, the handlebars, the pedals, the tires, the wheels, the spokes, and the crank and the chain. So I would say that, and sorry, one more, the brakes. That's probably the simplest summation of the bike parts of a bicycle. Those can vary, bike to bike, the different types of brakes, the different types of wheels. And when I say another thing to distinguish is when I say tires, I'm talking specifically about the rubber on the wheel. The wheel is the rim that the tire sits on, and the spokes are what connect, obviously, to the rim, which attaches to the bike. So that's really the highest level list. Now, there's other things too, like the derailleur or the gear mechanism. Not all bikes have derailleurs. The gear system is different across bikes, whether you have a single speed, 3 speed, 7 speed, 21 speed. But all the bike parts I just mentioned are what are essential for a bike to move. All bike parts on most bikes are actually specific to their specific category. Now, all bikes share the same components for the most part. There's typically not something on one type of bike that you don't see on another type of bike. What you do see is a different version of the same bike part on one bike versus another bike. So a great example would be, let's say on a road bike, you're going to see a forged one piece, or sorry, it doesn't have to be forged, but you're going to see a one piece fork. Just a standard fork on a road bike, whereas on a mountain bike, you might see a suspension fork or a normal one-piece, fork. So every bike's going to have a fork. It's going to be different potentially from a cruiser bike to a comfort bike to a mountain bike to a road bike. So some key parts that you see changing across different bikes, number one is going to be seat. You're going to see a different type of seat really across all bike types. Cruisers are going to have one type of seat. Mountain bikes are going to have another type of seat. Road bikes are going to have another type of seat, and comfort bikes are going to have a different type of seat. And it's very simple why. I mean, the needs of the rider on any one of those bikes is totally different. A road cyclist needs it for speed and aerodynamics. A mountain biker needs it for stability and speed, but maybe a little comfort. And comfort bikes are strictly focused on comfort. Cruisers, same thing, mostly comfort. The other thing you're going to see changing from, bike part, you're going to see changing from bike to bike is the handlebars. You're going to see a completely different road bike handlebar from a mountain bike handlebar from a cruiser comfort handlebar. And it all just depends on what type of riding position is best for a mountain bike rider, a road bike, or a comfort bike, etc. The other bike part that changes from category to category is tires. Different widths, different treads, different colors for that matter. Now, color isn't really, specific to a different bike type, but, cruisers, a lot of times you see white wall, sidewalls on the tire, and that's more for the aesthetic. On other bikes, you may just see all black tires. I would say lastly, what you're going to see different between categories is really going to be the gear system. So, cruisers, a lot of times you see single speeds or 3 speeds, and obviously road bikes, you see gears, 21 speeds and over. And mountain bikes, a lot of times, same thing. You might see less than 21 speeds on a mountain bike, but typically you see more speeds. Recreational bikes, you typically see 7 speeds or less, although 21 speeds aren't uncommon. And I would say adding on that too is the braking system. For cruisers, a lot of times you see coaster brakes, or a brake where you pedal backwards to stop. And recreational bikes in general, you'll see coaster brakes, more coaster brakes. Hybrid bikes, you'd see hand brakes with calipers. A lot of mountain bikes, you're going to see disc brakes. And then road bikes, you're going to see calipers, but you're going to see a much more expensive, very technical braking system that's different from a comfort cruiser bike. So the bike parts really vary across what type of category, and they're all designed specific to the use cases of the riders. I think the best place to get replacement bike parts, quite honestly, is your local bike shop. Couple reasons I say that. Number one, if you're not too sure about sizing or fitting of a certain part, taking your bike to that shop, have them take a look at it and get the part for you, that's really the best option. And they should have a wide selection of parts that work universally on all types of bikes. Just because, let's say you bought a bike from 630 and you bring it to your local bike shop, most likely they're still going to have components or screws and nuts that can work on our type of bike. And I say this too because we work quite a bit with local bike shops. We don't have a national presence in stores in every city across the country. So we get this question a lot. Well, where can I buy a new brake pad? Where can I buy new spokes? And what I would do is I would do the same thing most people would do is I would look on Google, I would read some reviews, and then I would personally call them and I would reach out and try to first understand the variance in price, because price can really vary depending on the shop in terms of not just the cost of the part, but also the labor involved. If it's a bike part that needs to be replaced and you aren't comfortable doing it yourself, you might want to check ahead of time. A lot of bike shops have published rates on replacing a certain part, especially if it's something very common like a chain or a pedal. So yeah, and if it's a simpler repair, I would say, you could probably go with the least expensive bike shop. If it's just replacing a pedal or replacing a seat or a seat post, I mean, those are very simple things most people could do at home. You don't need a very technical shop to do something. So I would say if you need something basic on one of our bikes, find the best offer locally. You don't need to go to some high-end technical road or mountain bike shop because their labor rates to replace bike parts is going to be quite a bit more because they have more skilled technicians. So number one is if you don't feel comfortable doing it and you don't really know what you need, I would say best place for replacement bike parts is a local bike shop. If you do feel comfortable and you know specifically what you need and you can literally Google in the size, there's a couple recommendations I would make. There's some websites, Nash Bar is one of them online. They have a pretty vast selection of bike parts. There's obviously Amazon, although I'm not quite sure Amazon will have, some of the specific parts you would need to replace on a 630 bike, but they may have some things to look for. There's another company called Bicycle Warehouse. They are actually a local store, but still has an online presence. And then there's a national retailer, which is going through the process of downsizing a little bit, but they're called Performance Bike. And Performance Bike has an online presence, and you could, look on their website. They should have a pretty wide selection of parts and components for all types of bikes. You could find most things there. The last two suggestions I'm going to make, number one, is Home Depot or Lowe's for that matter, or your local hardware store. If you simply need a screw or a bolt, and I don't know if most people know this, but those screws and bolts, they're not bike specific generally. They're just a certain thread size that is made for your bike. Now, on high-end road or mountain bikes, those screws or nuts probably were made specific to those bikes, and maybe there's a certain weight or lightness to them that you can't just go to Home Depot and replace it with any old screw or nut. But when you're talking about 630 bikes and then the price points we sell in, most of the screws and nuts on our bike, something comparable can be found at Home Depot or a local hardware shop. All you would really need to know is the length of the screw and the threading of the screw. How the screw actually, screws into the bike, whether it's a Phillips head or a flathead or an Allen key, does not matter at all. We've actually used all types of screws on our bikes. We've used Phillips head, we've used flathead, we've used actually wrench only Titan. So there's no, screwdriver option. There's also Allen key options. So I would say your number one choice, try to match it to the rest of your bike. But if you can't, again, that's not imperative to replacing a screw or a nut on a recreational bike, especially for 630. And lastly, best place to replace a part would be to contact us. We'll be the best source for you to at least tell you, what we think the best option is. And a lot of times, sometimes the best option, especially for speed and convenience, would be to suggest to go to Home Depot and just pick up a screw. If someone's not comfortable with that, or they want the actual OEM original screw, we of course have all those on hand, and we're happy to send any of those replacements. And we have on-hand replacement parts for any of the bikes that we offer.